I wanted to start out with the title, We Need to Talk. So no, we are not breaking up with anyone. It's really all about the true message behind We Need to Talk is we need to have a conversation. And the stress here is on the conversation part of it, where the why, what, when, how of social media is the actual part of the social media, the conversation that happens. Now, no one can deny the effectiveness of social media. I mean, it's amazing what we see around, what other organizations, other brands, and other companies are doing with social media. I forgot my clicker. So while it seemed like a niche offering when it started out, as a platform for college kids to talk to each other, other organizations have jumped on the bandwagon and they're doing some great stuff with social media. So looking at everything that's going on, we can clearly kind of say that government has been kind of a late adopter when it comes to social media, which is fine because then we have the luxury of learning from other people's mistakes. Having said that, we really still need to be part of the conversation. And let's look at the first aspect of it, the why. Why do we need to be part of this conversation? Well, clearly, the most stressing reason is that people are talking out there. Our constituents are social savvy already, and they are waiting for us to join. Because that's where they are having these conversations, they are discussing issues. And if we are not there, then we are missing out on being part of that conversation. The conversation is already happening. The best thing we can do is participate. Maybe it's our chance to set the record straight or just be part of the conversation that leads it to something better. But the main thing is to be part of that conversation. So far, we have been working with a mindset of, well, constituents come to us for answers. Not so much anymore. Because now we have to go and be part of that conversation wherever that is happening. All right, so the long tail from the old movie, I don't know how much, it brings back memories, but it truly does a lot for me. Build it and he will come, or in this instance, they will come, is really not true anymore. We have to go and meet them where they are, and where they are playing, where they are talking, and try and be part of that. The distributor, the generator, does not get the luxury to decide the distribution platform anymore. It is the consumers. It is the people who are part of that conversation. They are deciding the channel of the distribution. And it's no longer enough, to have a really nice website. It's awesome if you do have a website, if you have awesome content up there, the commissioner's message and the meeting minutes and stuff. But then very few people really rely on now going to websites to seek that information. Because when they are having conversations, the need arises in the middle of a conversation and they want the answer right there. So if you are there, if you are watching, and there are very many ways to listen to conversations. Well, there might be keywords. There are some state of Georgia agencies, for example, economic development. They do a great job, listening. If someone just mentions vacation, someone mentions any city within Georgia, they respond and they have a conversation. What happens here is suddenly people who are not even expecting a response, they see something, wow, the state of Georgia actually is talking to me. How great is this? So what is happening here is the social media is becoming, a prime point of interaction. So the fact that a lot of times when a voice from the government is missing, that creates a void. And that also fuels to other people just maybe answering for the government. It's always good to kind of, be there. And this is the reason most of the new government offices have started looking like this. People are spending a lot of time making sure They track what's happening out there. And these are just very few instances. There are many, many more government organizations who are doing a great job. The good part about having a conversation right there is because you're participating at the same venue, at the same platform that the discussion is happening. Also, this discussion is out in the open. You know, what better way to kind of show how transparent we are? And, you know, like a scenario where people are always suspecting the government and the overall trust is always questioned. So we are out there. We are out there having this conversation. This conversation is visible to everyone else. People like that. They appreciate that, you know, compared to many back channel conversations like email. A lot of the advocacy groups and grassroots organizations are out there as well. So if the constituent is represented by any of these groups, that's your chance. So Facebook, Twitter, all of these channels, there are just channels out there, but what's happening out there is really important. And the more we miss out on that is, you know, getting to be a big problem. The second aspect of social media is, well, what do we say? Fine, we can answer questions, but what else? Beyond that, what can we do? I'm going to start out with just this one example. Any guess who tweeted this? Okay, you win a t-shirt if anyone can guess. This was then Senator Obama. And this was his very first tweet. All right, so compared to the extremely mature and amazing social media campaign that he ran for his election, you know, we all can, you know, we all can understand there is a learning curve to social media. There is a certain learning curve to understand what is the best thing to say, what is something that you should not say, what is something that might sound a little premature, a little more optimistic than needed. And everyone does that. Everyone goes through that. So the fear to say something wrong should not stop your organization from being part of the conversation. It's a given that at some point there might be someone who will not like what you say, okay? And it is up to the organization to come up with a strategy, to come up with, well, how do we deal with that? But that shouldn't stop us from saying anything in the first place. In the social media circles, they kind of joke that it's not about if something goes wrong, it's about when something goes wrong. Because they go with, you know, the assumption that, well, at some point, something's going to happen. But truly what matters is how you get out of that, how you recover from that. The good part about social media, just kind of like, you know, some of these tweets by a lot of the politicians, it gives these politicians a human face. They're always shown in pictures up in the podium against flags in a very formal attire. But when we read their tweets, and a lot of them, if they are crafted, if they are really something that we can associate with, we start seeing a human face to that. And this is what social media has done, not just for the politicians, but like for these large brands and you know, movie stars who otherwise are looked like, you know, as larger than life. Now, this was something that just caught fire earlier this year, and I mean, I don't even have to explain to you what this is. The success of this picture, of this tweet, was not that Ellen had tweeted this, because this was not her first tweet. The success of this was the content of it. And just to kind of show you the results of what happened after this went viral, this got a total of 3.4 million retweets. I actually have updated numbers than the slide itself. About 2 million favorites and a total of 3.3 billion impressions. All right, just that one picture. But what is it truly that made it successful? It can be the fact that it was a selfie, right? I mean, what is it? It's just a bunch of people standing together. It's the exact same picture. But if this is what was tweeted, it might not have, caught such momentum. It was the expressions. It was the actual people who were in there. It was just that fact that she made the most of that moment, having all these great people in there. This was clearly not the world's first selfie. This was. This is a group of photographers from 1920 in New York when they opened their photo studio, which I believe it's still out there. This was the first selfie, and notice the camera. It was so heavy that 2 people had to hold it. So obviously, it is not the camera, it's not the idea of people. Well, it is the content. It is truly what is it that you are trying to say through your post. And this also gives you, as an organization or as a brand, a way to change the conversation, to have fun with the conversation if it's relevant. This is another selfie. Now, this is not a movie star or anybody that is huge, insanely famous. No. This is Laura Ellen, and she has about 1,200 followers, which is kind of, a pretty modest followers, and has about 8,000 tweets so far. So why am I showing you this selfie? She did something, okay? She tweeted that, "Can tell I like chocolate a bit too much when I'm following Kit Kat and Oreo." Now again, this was not the first time that somebody had talked about Kit Kat and Oreo. But this was an opportunity. And Kit Kat quickly jumped on it. And they created this. They said, the fight for Laura Ellen's affection is on. And they challenged Oreo to a game of tic-tac-toe. There was no reason for Kit Kat to do this. She was already following them. But they just saw an opportunity in that conversation. And they also saw an opportunity to have fun with their competitor. So they challenged them for a game. So now it was Oreo's turn to respond. But I mean, for all of us who have played tic-tac-toe many times, you can tell this is kind of an intimidating call, right? This is pretty much halfway battle one up there. So Oreo came back with a great response. They graciously backed out, but at the same time, they kind of complimented Kit Kat for this idea. So obviously, I'm not suggesting that we all start playing tic-tac-toe with other agencies or other organizations, but this is a chance where we can actually create enthusiasm. We can actually create collaboration, and hopefully, if other people play along, there really is a good example, a good case study that comes out of that. And a lot of times, it need not always be about fun. You could also have a serious message with a little fun attire, like what CDC did. Did you all read the zombie apocalypse? So this was a great post. They warned about this zombie apocalypse. For those who probably missed this, it surely caught everyone's attention, right? I mean, the most respected public service organization is talking about zombie apocalypse, really? And I mean, obviously, with Atlanta's association with Walking Dead, clearly CNN and all the other major news channels pick that up. But what a great way to educate people, especially the younger adults, about emergency planning. Right? They were all about the post. If you read down further, it was all about how do you plan for an emergency? How do you plan for something that you're not expecting? Right? So jumping into the zombie fray was just a way of catching attention, but their true message was across. This is an example of the city of Vancouver. What they did was they realized that their trash pickup was getting more and more complicated, just the way, because different companies were picking up different kinds of trash. So people were forgetting their schedules, or people were, kind of getting left out. So what they did was they asked people to subscribe to their Twitter feed, and they would tweet a day in advance to remind people, hey, tomorrow XY region is going to be picked up. This dropped their phone calls, their complaints, and there's just this one gentle gesture of having that avenue for that conversation for something that people can subscribe to came at a cost of $87. That was all that it took. Anybody remembers this? This is my favorite story from a couple years ago. December of 2012. This tourist from Arizona walking on New York streets, saw this officer approach this homeless person, who had like blisters on his feet, and he was like, well, he had bought him a pair of shoes, and he was putting them on, saying, well, I'll take care of you. Now, this tourist just happened to be, a communications director at a local sheriff's office in Arizona. So when she went back, she emailed NYPD this picture and kind of, wrote this story about what she saw. And what NYPD did was they put it on their Facebook page. Oh. And that's where it just caught fire, because people now started reading about this. This was clearly something that was not staged. This was, a tourist from another state who had witnessed this. End of the day, the cops looked really good. They showed their human side. The city looks tender for what New York otherwise is known for, and it made a perfect Christmas story. But here's what the impact was. Wow. Okay, this was not a picture that had any of the movie stars in it, right? But it was just purely the story. It was purely, what had happened, and huge impact, huge. This is the city of Takeo, Japan. When they elected a new mayor, the first thing the mayor did was to replace the city's website with a Facebook page. This is an excellent example of being where the conversation is happening. They notice that that's where people are talking, that's where people are discussing. Why not give them an option to involve us in that conversation so we can answer them? And the part of being on Facebook is also that they got to get complaints or suggestions from people who are registered, so who are legit. It wasn't just some anonymous people ranting about things. So they had some actual actionable things that they could work on. But it was quite a bold move. Back then, it wasn't very well taken, but the way everyone embraced it, it came out as a winner. Another excellent example is Iceland. So after, kind of like getting their independence from Denmark, they needed to evaluate if their constitution was still appropriate, or they needed to revamp the constitution. And what they did was, again, they took that to Facebook. There was a committee of 25 people, 4 people, and what they did was they opened that conversation on Facebook, and people started suggesting things. And there was a certain, kind of panel of clearance, and when those suggestions were read, they were aggregated, and they were then discussed on Facebook. And that's how they actually ended up rewriting their entire constitution on Facebook. So the message is really important. The intent is really important. It actually takes an idea. It takes strategy about what is it that we want to do, right? It starts out with, well, what is our organization doing today? Do we need to first create awareness? If the awareness is there, then do we need to start collaboration? Do we need to generate any enthusiasm? What is actually relevant for our brand? So the third aspect of it is, when do we have this conversation, right? The timing aspect of this is as crucial as the content. We all know, or most of us know, this famous tweet, right? So please, like everyone who has watched Super Bowl, experience the blackout for all of 39 minutes. Within those 39 minutes, Oreo came up with this ad and they tweeted it. This was making use of that time, right? So it tied. So the timing is as crucial. A lot of times you can't plan that. Sometimes you just have to think about these at that particular time. Just, this was not an organization, but this is a good example of what overall people, users, did. A couple years ago when DC was shook with the earthquake, people in DC started tweeting about the earthquake. By the time the earthquake reached New York, or at least people in New York felt the shake, they already had read those tweets. The tweets beat the actual earthquake by 30 seconds. What a great platform, what a great channel for any emergency preparedness, right? So this is like the modern day where the channels are changing and the source for people to get their news is different than what it used to be. This is a great example. I love this. This is New York City's pothole gang. This is one of the 6 people that make the pothole gang. And all they do is they go and they fix potholes in the city. But the way they do it is they let people tell them where the potholes are. And now this is not a unique concept. Many cities, including Atlanta, at every level, they are doing this. But New York was like one of the first cities to have done this, where people actually can use an app or use Twitter to let them know. And if it's an app, it captures their coordinates right there. And it all feeds into this spreadsheet. And other people get to vote on it. So if it's a problem for a certain busy intersection with a pothole, other people have that opportunity to say, well, this is more important than that other pothole, and maybe 10 cars pass every day. And accordingly, they have their marching orders. Every morning before sunrise, they look at that and they decide their routes. And then what they do is, after every day, they post it. They post how many potholes they fixed that day. This is how many potholes they fix on an average day. Up till now, based on their website, they have fixed about 287,000 potholes in the city. And it's not just potholes, it's everything else, even the torches and everything. But an excellent tool for any sort of an emergency, any sort of help situation. This was us. Early February, right? And we all know that we resorted to some or the other social channel to either find out if our friends were okay, if our family was okay. So did the officials. The 911 lines were so jammed that the city of Atlanta actually had to post it. So if you can't get to 911, send us a message to Facebook and Twitter, but let us know that you need help. Right? But at the same time, and this is the timing aspect of it, Home Depot did too. They opened their stores in the Southeast, right? And they let people know that, look, if you're seeking shelter, this is where you go to find out if there's a store near you that's open. So they really kind of showed the human side of it. All the comments down there are people just applauding this tweet, saying, thank you, Home Depot. But it didn't stop there. People started contributing. They started taking pictures and they started posting. Now they could either do a certain hashtag to make sure that it follows a certain string of conversation, but it just kind of went viral from there. I was watching out for this tweet because that's where my daughter went. And it was so good to know that what's happening, right? I mean, I know they're in schools, but it was good to know that what's happening on at least an hourly, period. So having this timely response is also extremely important when it comes to social media. So the last part is, well, how do we do it? It all looks good, right? How do we do it? First thing is, every organization should go through a reality check. If you plan to have a social media presence, if you plan to have any involvement with social media, we first need to see if we are ready for it. We need to have some people, who understand social media, who will be on the forefront, who will be answering those questions. But at the same time, we also need the support from all the leadership. We need to know that they are going to back us, they are going to be supportive of this effort of social media. Because the moment you open the floodgates, especially as a government organization, you're going to be busy. People are going to start pouring in with questions, and a lot of times you have to probably answer most of them. Some of them you just can't help it. And this is where the strategy comes in. And later, Bethany will be talking a lot more about the strategy aspect of social media. What is it that you answer? What is it that you choose to ignore? What is it that you can just defer to someone else? The next thing is goals. Like, your social media presence should not just be a presence. It has to align with your organization goals. What is the goal of your organization? And you also have to make sure at every post, at every conversation, that goal is represented. If your goal is to be friendly, then that's what you need to be. The next is obviously, strategy that trickles down from those goals. What is it that you do? Kind of like what I said earlier, if it's about creating awareness, then for a certain amount of time, that's what you need to have. Then you probably also need to have some key performance indicators, some KPIs, to kind of see if you are truly contributing to creating awareness. How can you measure that awareness? Then going forward, have interactions with your users. Understand your users. Make sure you know what they like, when they like to contribute. Going back to Bethany, what she's going to be also talking about is what we do on the Georgia Gov social media side. What posts get users really excited? And this is the strategy aspect of it, but it also really relies on knowing the users. And then, after that, find a channel, find a tool. And this is kind of something that should come last. First, after knowing everything, after you are certain this is what you want to do, then start looking for the tool. Because now you have a problem, and then you're looking for a solution, not the other way around. And this would be a good transition to kind of get into Blair's talk, where she is going to be talking about most of these tools and what they do, a little deeper dive into each of these tools. Thank you.